ask unanimous consent for initiation of the quorum call.
Without objection, and the senator from Indiana is recognized.
Mr. President, I am somewhat unique position as a returning senator after having been away for 12 years. I never contemplated rerunning for the Senate or being back on this floor in any capacity except a former senator. So I have had a chance to kind of do it over, I guess, the best phrase, and assess what is really important and why I'm really here. I really only ran for one reason. I have deep concern about the direction of our country and our plunge into debt and deficit. I've tried to avoid coming here and assessing blame. I think if we can set aside who is responsible or who isn't responsible or the politics of all this and just simply recognize that this is the situation that we face. And this situation that we face has potentially dire consequences for the future of this country. Not just for, as we say, our children and grandchildren, but even this generation. Our economy is not in good shape. We have not recovered from one of the deepest recessions ever since the Great Depression. There are a lot of people out of work. The official number, I think, is 9.2. The real number is probably much higher than that because a lot of people have either given up looking for work or they extended their time in school because they know if they graduate and get out into the job market, they're not going to be able to find a job, particularly in the areas that they're trained for, or perhaps in any area. There are a lot of people that just have tried and tried and tried and simply cannot find work. It's clear, and I think there is a consensus, if not a total consensus, at least pretty close to total consensus, that we simply have run out of money. As a government, we've made promises to people that we can no longer afford to pay and fulfill, at least at 100%, or we're moving very quickly toward that. That we have enjoyed a lot of largesse, a lot of prosperity. As a result, a lot of commitments have been made for spending in a whole range of running the course from discretionary programs, building highways, building sewer systems, doing a lot of good things, but also things that we just simply no longer can afford. And we see this happening across the world. We've been in about a 60-year spurt or commitment to credit, and now we've run out of ability to pay for all that. And so whether it's Southern Europe, whether it's other parts of the world, or whether it's the United States, we find ourselves in a very difficult situation. Now, for the last 6 or 7 months, a lot of us, most of us here, have worked very, very hard to try to find a solution to this. And we're now in the month of July, and we're approaching a time when we reach our debt limit. We no longer can continue to borrow without raising that limit. About 40-some%, 42 to 44% of everything we spend now has to be borrowed in order to be paid for. That's unsustainable. We're told that basic programs to help the senior citizens of our country enjoy a productive rest of their life, whether it's their medical payments under Medicare, those in lower income Medicaid payments, or Social Security payments, that those funds are drying up. And it won't be all that long before either benefits have to be cut, or perhaps the programs become insolvent. No one here wants to see that happen. What we do want to see happen, though, are necessary steps to preserve those programs for the future. This crisis is real. It's coming down all over the world. We're watching it take place as it creeps through different countries. We are facing that, whether it's a liberal economist or a conservative economist or anybody in between or someone with no political potential gain or loss by assessing these kind of things, have basically said, you've got to take action. And you need to take it now. You can't postpone it. The longer you postpone it, and by the way, you've been doing it for years, we all knew this baby boom was, boomers were going to retire and put tremendous pressure on our budget. That's exactly what is happening. The quicker we do it, the less painful it'll be, but it's going to be painful because we put it off for so long. Now, what disturbs me here is that after 6 or 7 months of sincere effort by a lot of people, and this is not just Republican, Democrat, we're doing it and you aren't, you're doing it and we aren't. But this is people who genuinely have a concern about the future of this country and feel that we need to address these issues, as painful as they are. And it goes against our political instincts of preparing ourselves and positioning ourselves for a re-election, whether it's 2012 or beyond. I said from the beginning, unless we find a way to transcend the political, transcend the 2012, transcend positioning ourselves for success in 2012. Well, wait till we get the next president. We've got to get a different president. We have a different Congress. We've got to make the Republicans take over here in the Senate and hold the House and so forth. The closer we get to the crisis, the more we're positioning ourselves for failure, and so that we're not blamed for the failure. And the reason we came here was not to position ourselves so that politically we can succeed in the next election. The reason we came here was to deal with a problem that's in front of us right now. It needs to be addressed right now. What is the rough consensus? The rough consensus is that if we don't have at least, over the next 10 years, $4 to $6 trillion of cuts in discretionary spending and some of the mandatory programs, we're not going to have a credible program that the financial world will look at and say you can still trust in the value of the dollar, you can still see America as a safe haven to place your investments, and you can have an economy that is moving forward and providing jobs for people. It also, there's a consensus that unless we make structural changes, not just cuts and nicks and here, little slices here and there, structural changes in the entitlement programs, they will not be solvent in the years ahead. And we will have to turn to those senior citizens and beneficiaries and low-income people and just say, well, I'm sorry, we just simply can't pay you what we had committed to pay you. Your benefits are going to have to be lower, or we're going to have to raise taxes to pay for it. And without comprehensive tax reform, you're not going to have the kind of package that you need in order to guarantee or to at least make the best assurance that you will have a dynamic, growing economy which can solve some of our problems here. So it's not just cutting, it's not just growth, but it's a combination of that in structural reform that is necessary as a package, and that's what we've been debating and debating how to get there. What's disturbing to me lately is that we have shifted away from that central focus, and now are focusing on who's going to take the blame when we default or don't default on August 2nd. And a lot of political posturing around here. It's not about corporate jets, and it's not about a number of things that have been, it's not about all these ads out there and mailings and so forth going out on, Congress is going to take away your Social Security benefits. Congress is going to slash your Medicare benefits. I guess what I'm asking for is that we acknowledge the reality of the situation that we're in, that we do our very best effort to put this above the politics of 2012 and work to find some sensible solution to all this. Now, comprehensive tax reform can potentially, I believe, provide a way to address the need for revenue and the need for growth. As we know, there are multiple hundreds, if not thousands, of special expenditures, exemptions, subsidies, credits in the tax code that were put in for the few and not the many, that have complicated our tax code to the point where no one can understand it except someone with an advanced degree in accounting or law, that provide all kinds of special interest subsidies but yet which do not support the needed growth that we have to have. And so tax reform, as a part of whatever program we finally come up with, I believe is essential. Now, Senator Wyden and I, on a bipartisan basis, Democrat from Oregon, a Republican from Indiana, have put together a provision. We don't call it perfect. We're open to suggestion. But what it does is it eliminates those special exemptions and uses the revenues from that to lower the tax rates. On our corporations, we pay the highest tax rate of every one of our competitors except one around the world. There's about 36 that compete around the world to sell their products in the world. And we're 35th out of 36. We want to get us down to a level playing field with the rest of them because we think we can outcompete and beat them, and that'll be a significant positive impact on our economy. And so using those revenues as a way of addressing some of the needs that we have here is certainly something that we ought to be exploring. Lastly, let me just say, we need to focus on the reality of the situation in a personal way because we just get caught up in numbers and we get caught up in generalities. What are we trying to do? We are trying to get this economy moving again so that people who have been searching for work for 2 and 3 years can get a job back, so that young couples have the opportunity to buy a home in which to raise their family, so that parents who are saving and trying to get their children into good schools for postgraduate education or post-secondary education have the ability to do that, so that college graduates and graduate school graduates can come out of school with a degree and find a place to work and begin a career, so that people who are really hurting have an opportunity to bring income in so that they don't have to be in a situation where they're on the dole. We owe it to the people of our country that are suffering right now, and there are many. We owe it to this nation, which has provided so much opportunity and so much prosperity for so many people. No country in the world in our history has come close to what America has achieved. We owe it to our children and our grandchildren who will inherit what we have done or not done. And the reality is we are loading and transferring a debt load on our children and future generations that they may not be able to overcome. I don't want to leave that legacy. I don't want to be part of a generation that does that. But we have to recognize that we're hurting now as well as going to be hurting in the future. And so it's time, I think, for us to stand up and do what is necessary to address this problem. You know, my mail is running 100 to 1 in favor of cutting government spending. And it's running 100 to 1 against cutting anything in Social Security or Medicare or touching that. And it's running against all kinds of other programs, and I have people coming into my office every day saying, you know we've got to get our fiscal house in order, but let me tell you why our program needs to be exempted. And so we're used to, we want to, as politicians, we want to say yes to people. As responsible elected officials, faced with a very, very difficult situation, we have to, with compassion, look at people and say, no, we're not able to do this. We're not able to afford this. But we're taking this action so that we can in the future. We're taking this action so that we can leave future generations with the same types of opportunities that our generation has enjoyed and the benefits that come from living in America. That may cost some people their elections. There are a number of people here are willing to sacrifice for that purpose. Do we want to leave and say, well, I survived all this many years politically, pretty clever, huh? Or do we want to leave here saying, at the right time, we did the right thing? At the time of crisis, at the time where our country desperately needed for us to come together to address this very serious problem that could plunge our country into a deep, deep recession, if not depression, where the world is financial institutions around the world are fragile, where we're looking at some really serious stuff. And that doesn't even get into the national security issue as wars and conflicts are popping up all over the globe. What do we want our legacy to be, regardless of what the consequences? We're 2-3 weeks away from defaulting on our debt. A lot of excuses around here about that really won't have that many consequences. It will. The idea of using that as leverage to gain what we need to do doesn't appear to have worked. But I think if we put and keep our focus on the fact that default or not default, we still have a major problem. Just simply finding a way to skid through this thing and raise the debt limit does not solve the underlying problem. That has to be addressed. I wish we had been able to do that because the situation is dire. We can't wait until 2013. We need to do it now. So here I am. I don't have answers. I have some guidelines from people who know a lot more about this than I do, people who don't have a political stake in this, in terms of what they think we need to do to put together a package that has credibility with the financial world, so that what has happened in Greece and maybe in Portugal and in Ireland and maybe now in Italy or maybe in Spain, maybe in Europe, maybe in other places of the world, so that is happening there will not happen here, because we have restored some confidence and restored some faith that in the American people and in the investment communities in the United States and across the world, which see the United States as a safe haven for their money. Put some credibility into our program here that we have seen the problem, we have recognized it, we have taken meaningful steps, and while it will take us a while to get there and while it will be painful, America has come through. I think it was Winston Churchill who said that America does all the wrong things before ultimately it does the right thing. Well, we spent a lot of years doing the wrong things here, not recognizing that we were building up a fiscal situation which would be unsustainable and that our debt would come back to haunt us. We've tried a lot of methods and postponements and deferments and everything else. What we haven't done is really stand up to the problem that we have, do what is necessary, take this above politics, do what's right for America. Mr. President, with that, I would ask unanimous consent that Carlos Algara, an intern in the office of Senator Merkley, be granted floor privileges for the remainder of today's session.
Without objection.
And with that, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Alaska.
Mr. President, I rise to speak briefly about the progress in the nation of Croatia, which I was honored to visit recently. At the invitation of the Croatian Minister of Defense, I participated in what is known as the Croatian Summit, a gathering of leaders from Eastern Europe. The theme of this year's summit was a new decade for Southeast Europe, finalizing the transition. Less than 15 years after a terrible ethnic war that devastated Croatia, the nation is making enormous progress. It is rapidly making a transition to a market-based economy, and its government leaders are committed to a strong and lasting partnership with the United States. They are a great partner of ours in Afghanistan and in other trouble spots across the globe. That's personally important to me because 100 years ago, this year, my grandfather immigrated from Croatia to this country, John Begic. Then it was spelled B-E-G-I-C. Then 17 years old, he left his farm and eventually settled in northern Minnesota, in the Iron Range. John Begic and his young bride, Anna Martinich, had 4 children. Their youngest, Nicholas, made his way to America's new frontier, Alaska, even before we were a state. He was my father. Nick Begic was an educator and eventually was elected Alaska's lone member of the United States House of Representatives in 1970. I'm honored to follow in his footsteps as a member of the Senate, where I'm the only member of Croatian descent. My recent visit to Croatia, to Dubrovnik, was my first to Croatia. I was honored to represent the body at the summit, along with officials from the State Department and the U.S. Embassy. I was impressed by the great progress underway there, as well as the excellent job being performed by our embassy personnel. There are enormous opportunities for partnership between the United States and Croatia, and I'm anxious to pursue those. Mr. President, I ask unanimous request that my remarks at the Croatian summit be printed in the congressional record to document my participation in the summit and the strong partnership between our nations.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to just put on the record my experiences being in Croatia this last weekend, and again seeing a country after 15 years ago going through incredible devastation to where they are today. I yield the floor. I note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Okaka.
Mr. President, I rise today to report to the Senate on the completion...
Senator, we are still in a quorum call.
I ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to report to the Senate on the completion of my North Carolina budget listening tour. While people in this town were mired in political gamesmanship that seems to be pushing parties farther apart, I wanted to hear directly from community leaders and business leaders in North Carolina about how they think we should be approaching the responsibility that we have to reduce our deficit and our debt. I held listening sessions all over the state, from Raleigh to Greensboro and Charlotte to Wilmington. And I heard from North Carolinians of every kind, small business owners, healthcare workers, veterans, entrepreneurs, and more. And the message I heard could not have been more different from the partisan bickering in Washington that's dominating the airwaves. In Washington, we see negotiators walking away from the table, refusing any and all compromise, putting politics ahead of what's best for the American people. In North Carolina, people were coming to the table and putting party aside for common-sense solutions to meet our shared budget obligations. To me, the message was crystal clear. Washington needs to take a lesson from North Carolina. It's far past time to put partisanship aside and do what's right for the American people. At the Charlotte listening session, I heard from the executive director of a health care nonprofit responsible for caring for the elderly. She told me about important ways that we can reduce health care costs and save lives, like expanding access to preventive care for seniors to reduce the onset of expensive chronic diseases. And Gayla Woody, the Director of Aging at the Central Council of Governments, told me the story of how one of her clients, a man caring for his wife with Alzheimer's, was able to continue to care for her at their home thanks to the comparatively small investments made in the family caregiver program rather than a more expensive nursing home. But they both also told me that we cannot afford an extreme plan to turn Medicare into a voucher program for vulnerable seniors. Balancing the budget on their backs is not a solution that I can support. I also heard from small business owners, economic development coordinators, and community bankers at our Wilmington and Raleigh tour stops. They told me about how Washington's partisan paralysis is preventing them from having the sort of certainty that they need to be able to make the hard decisions to invest in their businesses and to grow jobs in this economy for their companies. If these businesses don't know whether they ought to be investing in new equipment or new employees, then we're not going to be able to sustain the economic growth that's a necessary component to reducing our deficits and our debt. I also heard from a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps and current chaplain for the Onslow County Special Incidents Response Team. This dedicated public servant talked about the importance of protecting services for our veterans, and I will fight for them just as hard as they have fought for us. But he also talked to me about the importance of priorities. He said that we ought to keep our promises to those who sacrificed for us, our seniors and our veterans. But we also need to invest in our children and their education. It was important for the future that he believed, and I agree he was right. Now, while the challenge of reducing our deficit may appear daunting, I don't believe that meeting it is impossible if Washington takes to the heart the message that I heard all over North Carolina last month. Both sides, Democrats and Republicans, need to put aside partisanship and come to an agreement that is bipartisan and balanced, one that includes a shared sacrifice, but also fulfills the sacred promises made to our seniors and our veterans and makes the critical investments necessary for a prosperous American future. And above all else, they do not want us to continue kicking the can down the road one more time. They sent us here to make hard decisions, Putting them off to resolve during some future crisis is simply not an option. These broad goals and values are widely shared across party lines, and I recognize that turning them into a bipartisan, balanced solution to our fiscal challenges will not be easy. But the consequences of failing to do so are simply too great to ignore. Thank you, Mr. President. And I notice the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I ask the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I come to the floor today as a member of the United States Senate, specifically, though, as senator from Wyoming. Because in Wyoming, our families know they have to live within their means, and Wyoming is a state where our state lives within its means. In Wyoming, our very Constitution requires that our state lives within its means. Washington has a total debt now that is over $14 trillion and continues to climb every day. Wyoming's total debt is zero. How did Washington fail where Wyoming succeeded? Well, in Washington, this city overspends, and you know, in Washington, there is nothing really to stop it. In Wyoming, we live within our means because our Constitution demands that we balance our budget every year. It is time for Washington to take a lesson from Wyoming and the other states that balance their budgets every year. You know, the President says that, and he said, quote, he said, all of us agree that we should use this opportunity to do something meaningful on debt and deficits, close quote. Well, passing a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution is possibly the most meaningful thing that we could do. This city's finances are in disarray. Our nation's finances are in disarray. And it's been over 800 days since this body has passed a budget resolution. Since the last time a full budget was passed, our country has spent over $7 trillion. $3.2 trillion of that money was money we do not have. Our total debt now, over $14 trillion. People say, how much money is that? The number is astonishingly large. Well, let's try to put it a little bit into perspective. Every day, Washington borrows over $4 billion. Borrowed over $4 billion yesterday, over $4 billion today. And if someone will lend us the money, we will borrow over $4 billion tomorrow. That's over $2 million a minute, every minute. Well, every single day, Washington borrows enough money to buy tens of thousands of new homes. Every single hour, Washington borrows enough to buy nearly 2 million barrels of oil. Every single minute, Washington borrows enough to send 53 students to private college for a full year. Every single second, Washington borrows enough to buy 2 new automobiles. We paid over $200 billion last year in interest on the debt alone. Now, the President talks about a tax on private jets. That's enough money, the interest alone, to buy over 200 private jets every day. It's not enough to think about this in the large terms. You have to try to put it into terms that people understand, because we are spending and borrowing so much money, it is difficult to put it into terms that people grasp and that they see. And, you know, it's good to hear the President acknowledge that we have to stop making more than the minimum payments in order to pay off and deal with this incredible debt. The President's also signaled his willingness to make a deal, he said, that involves what he calls meaningful changes to Medicare, to Social Security, and to Medicaid. And to his credit, the President has accepted that much of the problem with saving these programs springs from his own side of the aisle. And he says, and I agree, now is the time to do it. The Associated Press quotes the President asking the most important question of all: if not now, when? Well, the clock is ticking. In just 13 years, Medicare will be bankrupt. Mr. President, we have to strengthen Medicare. In 25 years, the same will be true of Social Security. Unlike our debt limit, this is not a limit that Congress can simply legislate away. We have to act now to prevent these programs from failing not just today's generation, but future generations. As a Senate Minority Leader has said, he said, I commend the President for putting Social Security and Medicare on the table. He is correct in doing that. So with the President seeing the light on so many issues, why are we still talking about finding a solution instead of actually getting one passed here in the Congress? Because for all that he claims to understand, the President has still fallen back on the same tax and spend policies that made this economic situation worse. It is clear that the policies of this administration have taken a tough problem and they have made it worse. You know, on the President's inauguration day, unemployment rate in this country was just under 8%. Today, it's 9.2%. Every American child who's born today will owe roughly $45,000. Let's compare that to the day that President Obama was inaugurated. Every child born then owed roughly $35,000. So in just those short years, the debt on a child born in America, the debt that they are born with, has gone up from $35,000 to $45,000. These disturbing economic results are the direct results of the past 2 years of policies. Now liberals want to hold the United States credit rating hostage for more tax hikes, and the President is leading the charge. He's trying to push more tax hikes despite the very fact that even he has now said it is the worst time to raise taxes. Back in 2009, President Obama said the last thing you want to do is raise taxes during a recession. So why then is he calling for $400 billion in tax increases today? And why is the Senate Budget Committee chairman trying to one-up the President by calling for $2 trillion? Well, of course, the President won't admit he wants to raise taxes. He likes to use wiggle words. He uses words revenue or spending in the tax code instead. But when you translate this Washington doublespeak, it comes out higher taxes. So with the spin exposed, liberals are trying another tact. They're trying to claim that they'll delay the tax increases until the economy recovers. Not saying they're not going to raise taxes. They said, well, just let's put it off for a while. This week, the President showed what this really means. He said, quote, nobody's going to raise taxes right now. He said, we're talking about potentially 2013 and the out years. It's an end of his quote. So in other words, this isn't really about waiting until the recovery comes, the economic recovery. It's about waiting till 2013, until after the President's re-election campaign. More troubling still, the President has already signaled that he wants to spend more in the future. Our problem is not that we're taxed too little, it's that we spend too much, and yet the President wants to spend even more. At his press conference, he said he's only tackling our debt so we can be, quote, in a position to make the kind of investments, he said, that I think are going to be necessary to win the future. When the President talks about investment, it's common knowledge what he's talking about is spending. Now, finally, for all his posturing about getting this done now, it is really the President who seems to want to kick the can down the road. His plan may cut trillions, but Washington would be able to take as long as 10 years to do it. Minority Leader McConnell has already blown the liberals' cover on these very cynical political bluffs. As he has said, quote, the President has presented us with three choices: smoke and mirrors, tax hikes, or default. Will Republicans choose none of the above? You know, as a doctor, I've taken the Hippocratic Oath. The oath says, do no harm. Well, I will tell you, Mr. President, raising taxes will harm our economy. And cutting spending at a snail's pace will do very little to help. We have to tackle our fiscal problems today. The first steps towards solving these problems should be to pass an amendment to our Constitution requiring Washington to balance its budget. A balanced budget amendment would require Washington to spend no more money than it takes in each and every year. Such an amendment would force Washington to live within its means, like many, many states do, and like the families across the country do. So I come to the floor, Mr. President, as co-sponsor of the balanced budget amendment. As a matter of fact, every Republican in the Senate is a co-sponsor of the balanced budget amendment. 47 Republican senators, every one a co-sponsor of the balanced budget amendment. We are united and will remain united, Mr. President. This is a common sense approach, and it will show the American people that they can trust their government with their money once again, because right now the American people have little confidence that they are getting value for the money that they send to Washington. I believe, Mr. President, that we need to lead today, not defer leadership until tomorrow. Americans are courageous. They deserve a courageous government. And that's why I know the American people overwhelmingly support a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. You know, the President said the other day, he said, it's time to eat our peas. I think we all saw him on television. It's time to eat our peas, he said. Well, I agree with another president. That's President Ronald Reagan, who said, it's time to starve the beast. And the beast is Washington and the Washington wasteful spending that the American people are seeing every day. Mr. President, Americans pay their debts. They want their country to do so too. It is time for Washington to listen. It is time for a balanced budget constitutional amendment, and then it is time to start paying off this massive, massive debt. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.